today. I can't remember the last time where I had 2 sermons in a row. It's amazing. It's amazing. So, for those of you who weren't here last week, our title of the talk is, What Movie Are You Watching? And today is part 2. So I'm going to recap just shortly, but before I do, I want to share this with you. Everything is always in divine right order. Always, even when we don't realize it. When I was given this title to this talk, and when I wrote this talk, and when I came to part 2, and I wrote part 2, I had no idea that today was the equinox. No idea. And what that means is that today is the day, astrologically, that's the first day of fall for our continent, and the first day of spring for the other continent, Eastern and Western Hemisphere in the world. And it's a season for new beginnings. And that's what we're talking about. It's about releasing those things that you don't want and bringing into your life those things that you do want. So that was so exciting for me when I saw that. So I want to review last week for those of you who weren't here. So what we were basically talking about is that when you are watching movies from the past, meaning that something happened in the past, and you are actually looking at the past, thinking that it's in today, and you are not present. I shared briefly how I was at a convention, and this convention was happening a couple of weeks ago, but I was stuck in a convention that was happening 37 years ago. And as a result, the convention that I was in 2 weeks ago, I didn't enjoy, because I was thinking I was stuck in a convention 37 years ago and making a comparison with what was going on in the moment. And what I realized, when we do that, when we get stuck in those memories, those movies that are running, this is what happens. Not only do we get stuck in the past, we don't enjoy what's going on in the moment because we're not present. Sometimes we berate ourselves for not being able to do what we were doing in the past today, because we're thinking that we should be doing what we did then. We begin to blame our surroundings or what's going on right now, because we're comparing it to the way things used to be in the past. And then we also compare our life, who we are, to others. But we're not comparing ourselves of today. We're comparing ourselves of yesterday with what's going on today. Like I was talking about how I was 35 then, but I'm not 35 today. But I was comparing this person today to the 35-year-old, causing much internal conflict. I want to also say this, that last week I talked about how the mind does not distinguish between the past, the present, or the future. So when you have a thought in your mind and you're holding it, the mind doesn't know that it happened 50 years ago. The mind just knows that you're holding a thought, and it will do everything in its power to make it happen for you. And that's turmoil, and that's conflict, and that is not peace of mind. Ernest Holmes tells us this, that when you change your thinking, you change your mind. We've been hearing that for a long time. Well, I'm saying that when you stop watching those reruns, you also change your mind. Because when we get stuck in reruns, how many of you know what I'm talking about when I say reruns? Okay, because you got that look on your face, like, what is she talking about? When you get stuck in those reruns, you get stuck in this loop, and it just keeps running over and over and over again. And a lot of times, we don't know how to get unstuck. And the first way to get unstuck is to begin to understand where you are actually living. You're not living in the present. You're living in the past. So the 5 steps that I identified last week were how to get unstuck, or how to keep yourself present, how to create peace of mind. Step 1, accepting what cannot be controlled. Stop trying to control the world. If you're like me, you want to control my life, and everybody else's life. Stop doing that. Stay focused on the here and now. What's present? What's happening here? Not what happened yesterday, 15 years ago, or not even projecting what's going to happen. Stay right here. Forgiving others and yourself. Releasing grudges. They should have did that. They should have did that. They did this to me. Releasing that, but also forgive yourself. If you did something that you don't feel good about today and it happened yesterday, just let it go. Forgive yourself. My mom said, and I said this last week, you make the best decision with the information you have in the moment. So you can't look back and say, I should have done, because you don't have the information then that you have today. Keeping track of your thoughts and emotions. Keep track of the thoughts and emotions and staying connected to the divinity, your divinity. So today we are going to be stepping in those last two steps. Keeping track of your thoughts and emotions and staying connected to your divine spirit. When we want to keep track of our thoughts and emotions, I go to Ernest Holmes' quote. And it comes out of the book, This Thing Called You. Everything in the world works harmoniously, divinely. I live in a completeness of this present moment. I live in a completeness in this present moment. Everything I need is right here, right now. And if my thoughts are not in alignment with that, I need to begin to watch those thoughts and see where they're coming from. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk and mindfulness master, defines mindfulness as the energy to be here and to witness deeply everything that happens in the present moment, aware of what's going on within. That means paying attention to your thoughts. When we bring awareness to where we are, we can observe our thoughts, the thoughts that are running through our mind. We can see how those thoughts begin to create emotions. And when we're mindful, we can decide if we're going to allow the thoughts that's running through our mind, creating the emotion, to give us our behaviors. Let me share something that happened when I was at that conference. We were sitting in this huge meeting and listening to the main speaker, and the people sitting behind me were laughing and talking, and I couldn't hear. And after about 15 minutes, I said, okay, what do I do? So I turned around, and it was two women sitting there. One was younger, one was older. And I leaned forward to the younger lady, because she was the one laughing, and I said, sweetheart, when you laugh, we have trouble hearing. And I said it just like that, very loving, very kind. So the older lady beckoned me forward. I leaned in. She said, you just need to listen harder. And I'm like, okay. I turned back around. In that moment, you know what thoughts were running through my head, right? You know that those thoughts created all these emotions in my body. But I was present. I said, you have a choice of how you react. You have a choice. How do you want to react? You're inside of a Narcotics Anonymous convention. You have 37 years in recovery. How do you want to react? Like somebody who has a month in recovery or somebody who has 37 years? I took a deep breath. I got up physically. I went around. I put my arms around a young woman. I said, sweetheart, if I offended you, I am so sorry. That is not what I meant to do. And she said, this is my first conference. I said, I did not mean to offend you. And if I did, I am so sorry. And the older lady, she was like, oh, thank you, thank you. And I went and I sat down. In the moment, what I did, I was watching my thoughts. And I was watching how those thoughts created emotions. And I had a choice. I made a choice to wrap everything in love. See, it had nothing to do with them. It had to do with me. Did I want to leave that meeting being upset, angry? Or did I want to leave that meeting in peace? And if I had created discomfort for someone else, did I want to create comfort and love? So when I got up and left, I was in peace and harmony. That's what it means when you pay attention to your thoughts. Because the thought's going to come in, they flitter in our mind all the time. There's something called race consciousness that we are real familiar with. Thoughts are just swirling around. They'll just go through your mind. Do you want to allow that thought to create an emotion in your body and then you create a behavior and you just run on down the line and then you get on the other side and try to figure out, how did I get here? Why do I feel like this? That is not how we cultivate peace of mind. You cultivate a peace of mind by always paying attention to your thoughts. You have to also ask yourself, who's doing the talking? Where do those thoughts come from? Was it your 5th grade teacher who told you, you can't spell, sit down? Was it somebody on the play yard? Was it somebody in your high school? Who is that talking in your head? Where's that thought coming from? Is it coming from the television? Turn it off. Stop listening. You have that type of power. And who we are sitting here today, we understand and we know that our thoughts give us our world. And they create our emotions, and that gives us our behaviors. So what we want to do is make sure that we monitor our thoughts. Can't always control them, but you can control your behavior and you can control how you react to your thoughts. That will keep you inside of a peace of mind. I just want to share, I got stuck inside of a loop of a movie running when I was 21 years old. A lot of you have heard this. My best friend was murdered. And I got stuck inside of that. And I stayed there for 10 years. From 21 to 31, I was stuck inside of this loop. And it ran my total life until one day I heard, and I know it was the voice of God saying, you have to let that go. And I created a ceremony, a release ceremony in our church. And I released it so that I could step outside of that loop I was stuck in and release it. I still have the memory, but I'm not stuck in the movie like it's happening today over and over again. That's what it looks like when you begin to take control of your thoughts. They'll be there. They don't have to control your life. Your behaviors don't have to be tied to thoughts that happen when you're 5 years old. We know a whole bunch of people running around that are 50, 60, 70, 80, but they're stuck in play yard when they were 5 years old. And that's why, because they don't take charge of their thoughts. Okay, step 5, connecting with spirit, your divinity. Ernest Holmes tells us this: we exist for the purpose of self-expression. The infinite has already implanted within us an instinctive intuition, which is the spiritual knowledge of good. That is within us already, the knowledge of good. Our whole growth results from our inner awakening. When we understand and know that, we can use that as our guidance. We know what the right thing to do is. So when you're monitoring your thoughts, what is the right thing to do will surface. Just like what surfaced for me at the convention. The right thing to do. Get up. Go hug this young woman. That was the right thing to do. That kept me currently in my peace of mind. And it also allowed me to give love to someone else in the moment. Howard Thurman, he's a black renowned minister and a modern day mystic, who he co-founded this church, and it was called the Fellowship of All People in San Francisco in 1944. It was an interracial congregation intentionally designed to break through the barriers that separated people on the basis of race, color, creed, and national origin. Now you know in 1944 that was radical. This is what he stated in one of his quotes. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go and do that, because what the world needs is people who come alive. That's what the world needs. And for me, coming alive means standing in your passion. What is your passion? How many of you know what your passion is? Let me see, raise your hand. Yeah, okay. Those of you who don't know, get in that mind and dig it out, because it's in there. I know it's in there. Passion shows up as hobbies, things we love to do, things that we're good at. That's passion. Connect with that, and then allow it to bring you alive. Cultivating a peace of mind means embracing your divinity. Your divinity is actually your passion. And then putting those practices in place that keep you connected to your passion. Now, many of us have experienced wanting to hide parts of ourselves. Because somebody said something to us, we heard something, we had some experience, and then we decide that there's a part of us we want to hide. And we spend a lot of energy trying to hide that aspect of ourselves. Or as we age, we often get the message that what we are going through is going to result in us being a lesser person. Our society doesn't value wisdom like other societies do. I lived in Africa for a year. People who had gray hair, they were revered. People who had wrinkles, people like, I want wrinkles, because wrinkles denotes wisdom. It denotes knowledge. But unfortunately, in our society, it denotes that we're going to be possibly a lesser person, because we put a lot of value on youth. We begin to hide parts of ourselves or feel bad about who we are becoming, because we are no longer standing inside of what society calls valuable youth. We have wisdom and we have knowledge that the world needs. That's valuable. But we don't always recognize that that is valuable. That's our divinity. When we hold on to it and express it, it bursts forth like light. How many of you walked in the room and seen people and you're like, oh, I want to know that person? That's light reflecting off of them. It's wisdom, it's knowledge. We diminish our divine self when we let go of the parts of us that stir our joy and our passion. Go back and grab those passions. Joy lives within. But when we're not paying attention to our thoughts and how those thoughts are impacting us, sometimes we can't feel our joy that's deep within us. Our own authentic expression with all our wisdom and knowledge is what the world needs today, and it needs it desperately. When we are willing to be our authentic, unapologetic, uncompromising selves, we release the joy, express happiness, and we give that out into the world. So I want to say that a world where everyone is available to come alive with no more hiding, no more playing small, no more feeling invisible is a world that we all want to live in. That's the world we strive to have. And it simply means that each person step into who they are in the moment, right here, right now. Grab your divinity. Stay connected to it. Because when we cultivate our divine connection, we bring blessings, not only to ourselves, but to the world. So I want you to ask yourself a question. What makes me come alive? And then step into that answer and declare, this is me right here, right now. Gray hair, overweight, wrinkles, whatever it is. This is me right here, right now, and I have a lot to give to this world. Our world is in the midst of what I'm calling a spiritual climate change. And we are the weather people. You get me? You are the weather people. You know those people on TV like, this is what's going to happen tomorrow. That's us. We're telling the world what our spiritual climate is happening. We are inside of a spiritual paradigm shift. And it is up to us to alert individuals what is going on. Everything's shifting. The world is awakening. And we sitting in this room right here, we understand and we know that. We have an obligation. Stay connected to our divinity. Watch our minds and emotions and take charge of our behavior so that we can step into the world and give what this world needs: peace, harmony, joy. We have that within. So I want to leave you with this today. Let us remember, we only need to stay present. That's not as easy as it sounds, but we can do it. Consciously send our thoughts into the creative substance of the universe. Because you know what you send out is going to come to you. So why don't you send out something that you want to come back? That's what Ernest Holmes called heaven. Cultivate a peaceful mind. This way we will make an impact on our world and facilitate the spiritual paradigm that we are living inside of right now. So I leave you with this. Make sure if you find yourself looking at an old rerun, just stop the projector. Now, we're old enough to know what a projector is, okay? If I said this to a group of young people, they're looking at me like, what is that? We know what a projector is. Stop it. And then create your own picture of what you want to see. Because that is who we are. Creative individuals in charge of this divine life that God has given us. I want to add a blessing to these words and a blessing to each and every one of you today. Thank you so much. Blessings.